Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tonebase. My name is Daniel Kurganov. I'm here with Sebastian Bohren. He's going to be our guest today for our live stream this week. Sebastian is a soloist, a chamber musician, born and raised in Switzerland. There's not that many Swiss soloists, so he's a rare breed, but he's a man of international repute. And we actually met in Zurich, and we studied there at the same time at the Zurich Conservatory, the University of Arts. Zürcher Hochschule der Künste. Yeah. My German is terrible, by the way. And yeah, so we met there, but we actually became closer friends, I'd say, after I left, after we parted, because then we talked about our kind of mutual love and obsession over great violinists. You know, we've talked about Milstein and Schering, Grumio, all kinds of these people that inspire us with their sound. So we're going to do today, we'll talk a bit about Sebastian's background, his interesting projects, and we'll get into a process that he underwent during lockdown, where he really kind of, he'll explain it, but essentially focusing on the quality of your playing, and Sebastian did a number of things that kind of took his playing to the next level. So we'll talk about that. Sebastian, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So nice to see you here. I'm really very, very happy to be joining and honored, and I'm so motivated and full of adrenaline.
Yes, awesome. So the first thing I wanted to just kind of get into a few of the things that you're involved in. So you're the director of Strata Concerts.
Yes.
Tell us just briefly about that, how that started.
So Strata Concerts basically was my own tool. When I was 17 or 16 years old, I didn't have any concerts, and my father told me back then, it was maybe one of his best ideas. He told me, if you don't have any concerts, you could organize them by yourself. So I started to organize concerts in small churches where I was living, and I made those concerts accessible for free, so people would just spend some money after the concert. And I started it when I was 19, and we started maybe with 7 people in the public, and I played some solo recital, and the youth orchestra played, and I was so happy because it was not much pressure, because people came for free, so I didn't feel like I didn't have to bring certain level but it grew gradually because I was doing a project at least every year. And then when I was lucky to have had the chance to enter the Stradivari Quartet when I was still a student in 2013, that boosted some of my development, because I got a nice Stradivarius violin, and I saw this time in the Stradivari Quartet. I knew that this violin would maybe one day disappear again, because the Stradivari Quartet was always on the threat that the Stradivari Foundation would one day take away the instruments. So I knew I would have a window of opportunity for several years, and I would have to use the sound of this violin to make my own sound really on the next level. And I had the confidence about my sound very, very early on. So I was thinking, now I have to push. And so I then could use my already small concert series to invite artists to join me to play, and to play works that I wanted to play, like repertoire I couldn't play elsewhere, like Vask's concerto or Shostakovich sonata with chamber orchestra. So, and I even used it to build my discography. Many of the digital releases I could later do for Sony Classical are live recordings from Brook.
Nice.
So I just I just started to organize my concerts, and sometimes now many of my colleagues ask me, I want to do that as well. but somehow they are not patient enough. If something grows really organically very slow, because we started so slow, and the first time we had a big public was when I played the Four Seasons. And I was smart enough to know you have to be smart, even smarter than you think. So I knew that my name would not bring all the people in yet. And I knew that the quality of my playing maybe also not yet. But so I had to build through lending other potential, like famous pieces. And so when I programmed the Four Seasons, I had a full church, and it went really well, and some people started to identify with this project. And because it was for free, the identification of the people was much stronger, because they said, "Oh, I'm participating in it." And that's how then, when I got, then later some strange guy from Facebook called me and said, "You want to do a recording for Sony Classical?" And I said, "Yes, of course." And he said, "Yeah, but you have to bring some money." I said, "I can try to organize that." And so then through this, like, it's like a nucleus, like a tiny one cell. And without thinking of always direct strategy, what I want to achieve through which move I'm doing, by waiting and by doing it with much care and identification, I created more identification, or this identification mirrored in the public, and made me build most of my career so far. Because now I'm at the point with the Strata Concerts where I can invite, also when I want to collaborate with Heinz Holliger or with great conductors, I can even invite them to play concerts in Bruck. And next year, or this year actually, in 2023, I'm launching next to the concert series, which is running throughout the year, like 6 to 8 concerts. I'm founding a new festival called the Bruck Festival.
Brugg, that's Brugg, not Bruch, Max Bruch.
yeah, the Bruck Festival, Brugg, and this is almost killing me at the moment, because it's such a huge step. But the idea is that we want to bind all the energy which is inside the concert series also in one event as well. And yes, so I was lucky to start it early, and I was patient, and I had a lot of enthusiasm, and I think real love for it. I have a lot of identification as well to that many people can visit our concerts because they are still for free, who couldn't afford the ticket in Muri, Boswil or Zurich even. And but of course, for me now it's like an opportunity creator and because I was always so frustrated for many years to always just ask for favors. Please give me a chance. I deserve it, or I'm nice, or I play nicely, or whatever. So I want to be on the side where people want. You have to always try to make people want more things from you. And you can still, at that time, if you have more, if people want, if you are the one who can create opportunities, you can still be a decent guy.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me like you realized early on that it might not be enough to just kind of follow the track, the obvious track, like, you're in school, and then maybe you do some competitions and hopefully you get noticed and like people take care of you and give you opportunities. Of course, there are people for whom that works, very small number of people.
I would doubt, Daniel, sorry for interrupting.
Please.
I think, I tried many competitions and I felt like I couldn't, I wasn't rounded enough when I was taking part. And I think if something doesn't work out for too long, then you have to reinvent very fast or think of other ways very, very fast. Not it's the same with what we will talk about practicing later. You shouldn't hit into the wall with force for too long. Yeah, you try several times, and then you take a break directly and take a break, which is the most important thing. Like take a break and then rethink, and maybe you will find a way around the problem. It's much more important. And I don't think that there's maybe one or two talents that the world has been waiting for, like Isaac Stern said, and then the whole world does open up, like maybe for Maria Dueñas, like recently, like where everybody thinks everything is there, like the virtuosity and the youth, and maybe even for I don't want to offend anybody, but for many people also the beauty and then everybody thinks like, oh, we can also make money out of it, and
of course. Yeah.
But normally, every musician, and even if he is like anti-careeristic in his way, he finds his own way of how to, even by not selling himself, how to sell himself and how to keep himself in the market, and it takes a lot of effort. And I think we have to. I cannot relate to many young colleagues who talk negatively about their agents or have more expectations, because I did it. When I look at this formula, it's so difficult for me to get where does my quality kick in and where does the agent mirroring. It's too connected. Yeah. So every time when I feel like I would deserve to get invitation from this orchestra now, or to enlarge my network there, and somehow it doesn't work, then I do the same process. I think something is not in place yet. If it was in place, it would go naturally.
Yeah. And well, I think that what you just said about kind of not banging your head against the wall, like maybe you bang it against the wall once or twice, but then you have to step back, maybe take a slightly different strategy. I think that has led you to do very interesting projects that maybe you wouldn't otherwise have done. Like I saw that you're more involved in new music now, and you're playing these interesting arrangements. Like you played this concerto, I guess it's a concerto by Eötvös, this Do Re Mi, right? And then also you did, which I really liked, you took Prokofiev's first violin sonata and you commissioned it to be orchestrated, violin and orchestra. I believe it was a Ukrainian arranger or musician that did it for you. And that just sounded so cool. And like,
it's actually, it's Andrei Pushkarev who did many arrangements for Guidon Kremer. Because I was many years I was walking in the footsteps of Guidon Kremer, playing all the repertoire he is championing, like Vasks and Shostakovich, because I felt like that's something I have as well, and I can do well. And so when I played the Shostakovich arrangement of the sonata for violin and strings and percussion, I felt like, wow, that's such a nice piece. And it just intuitively, I had in mind that the first Prokofiev sonata is also a very dark piece and also has these chords which are very like monolithic chords in the second movement. So I felt like maybe one could arrange that as well. And I paid Pushkarev to do it because I'm really idealistic. I paid it and I gave it to Sikorsky for free, and they printed it. And just now in January, for the first time, another violinist is playing it. It's Renaud Capuçon in the Carnegie Hall with Orpheus Chamber Orchestra. So I'm really happy about that. But why did I come up suddenly to play contemporary concertos recently? It was because the only opportunities I got to play with orchestras are usually linked with direct suggestions of what I should play, and so I don't get to plan my season. Yeah, we will do this 5 concerti, and we will.
Or like Sokolov, one program a year.
No, I never had that chance. I have to take what is offered, and I made such a great experience when I practiced the Lindbergh violin concerto because I was kind of arrogant about it. I think, yeah, it's not really good music. But I said, okay, I will practice it, and I practiced it, and I got so much into it. And Lindbergh was watching the performance live, and he was really, composers always make you feel good because then you play their music more often. But he was honestly happy about it, and I felt like it's like learning a new language. Like every new concerto I learn is I have a fresh chance to try to play the instrument well for the first time, kind of. And I have to, and it's also like a love affair. It's because I have to find out, am I going to be able to in 6 weeks learn this new violinistic language and to become, and it's also easier to play that than to play the Beethoven concerto because I can become the concerto kind of.
Well, there's also there aren't like 100 recordings of it that you're immediately comparing yourself to. So I find this extremely rewarding too, and I told also my agent I'm up for any concerto. Also, I ligeti, duty, everything, and I'm not afraid anymore because I the last 2 years I mean this year I think I learned 6 or 7 new concertos. Wow. Like
Korngold, Oetwisch, Bartók No. 1. Czech-Navorian concerto and Frank Martin polyptych and and I also played Brahms double and Mendelssohn and Szymanowski, and and I managed to not lose the quality this year, so I'm so happy about that, and I'm confident to learn new pieces, and I would recommend everybody to, until you have played it with the last cell of your body, you cannot judge if it's good or bad.
Yeah, I agree. That's been my experience with contemporary music as well. So I'm wondering if we could give some advice to those who are watching us, who maybe don't have any experience playing new music, maybe even like 20th century music is still kind of a new concept. How would you advise someone to approach a piece of new music? How can they discover that language, like you were talking about? Like, do you relate it to things you already know, or do you have an approach where you can kind of get accustomed to it?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question because obviously the start can be very difficult because you feel like you cannot grab any of the texture so as fast as you are maybe used to. But interestingly, if you manage to make it your own, which I will try to explain how I do it later, if you manage to get there behind that, then you can play it anywhere with any orchestra, and you will never have this. If I play Mendelssohn concerto, I always have to make the same step every day. I played it with Andrew Manzi and Royal Liverpool in October, and we had a good concert before with Szymanowski, and I played the Mendelssohn 5 times that year before, and I felt it's one of my good pieces. And the first rehearsal was a dream, and me and Manzi were really happy. And then Sunday morning in the general rehearsal, something beat me, and I was kind of irritated, and it was a concert I think at 2 p.m, and it was really difficult. So with those repertoire pieces, I feel like I have to make this huge step every time new, and in every hall with every orchestra, and with modern pieces, if I'm in it somehow. It's like Shostakovich. After you played it twice, you will feel like it's in your blood, and it gets much easier. But how to access a score like that, or even maybe a 20th century score, is you have to work. Generally, in practicing, I think we have to work in intuitive layers. So first of all, before practicing, you have to take a break, like 2 or 3 days, to get all the wrong notes and all the wrong tensions out of your body and out of your hardware. And then when you really feel like refreshed and empty, then the amount of information and what your brain can absorb is different, and it like a stone in the water. It will. I always imagine. I want also when I teach, I want to throw like a stone let fall a stone into water, which has immediate effect, but should fall down for months or years. And so same about practicing. So I would start very, very homeopathically to listen the piece often if there's a recording, and then I will start to, at the same time, I will work with all different aspects of how I can channel the music. I will work intuitively with what touches me. I will try to, I'm not good in analyzing the music, but I will try to, let me see if I can find, I will try
some
to...
of this music, analyzing it, you know. I mean, you can analyze some things.
I will just start to, every day, do 2 or 3 hours of analyzing the score and coloring it, and by that sinking into the score. And I will do like the violinistic passages. I will practice them really slowly and never trying to achieve a result in one day. Like I'm not trying to, when I practice slow, I will not go to the layer that I will expect to happen in 2 days by myself. I will let the progress happen in the sleep, because that's where it happens. I will just try to monitor and collect, and then I trust my more and more better experience to lift it up.
So it sounds like in this way it's very different than, let's say, if you had to learn some obscure Mozart concerto that you never, like you could learn that, and maybe on day one you can learn the notes, and already, because you know the language, you can essentially play it pretty close to how you will be performing it. And then it's just a question of fluency. But with this, since it's a new language, it seems like you're not trying to jump to that final step right away, because then there are all these assumptions that you bring with you, and you want to get rid of assumptions and kind of from other languages, so to speak.
Yeah, yes, and I also try, it's really interesting, because I have been thinking about this a lot, also about teaching and about practicing, how to go really deep into a subject during the practice, and how to at the same time cover the most possible broad ground. And what I think usually is, or what how I can work best is if I in the beginning of the practice, like a long hike, I start in a tempo where I would think that I only have to stay in the woods. I never have to climb the mountain. So I would really focus on very specific, most specific, narrow subject in the playing, and I would get completely obsessed there. And suddenly, by really focusing my ears, because it's here, the fingers are going to work very fast if you're clear here. So when I have this high intensity focus, then I will explode and cover a lot of ground. And so I observe that, and that's why I also, when I practice, I try to never go into too. Sometimes I play and I stop practicing and I start to play and play and play. That's also important, I think. But I will not practice and my head will wander, will walk around. I did that often before. So practicing was kind of my psychological hygiene. But it backfires to me on the stage. Because then also on the stage I will play like a zombie. And so I will try to be extremely 100% present during playing and practicing, and so a lot of time in my practice time stays silent because I'm thinking.
Yeah. No, this is
Because
so
I'm
this is so
thinking.
crucial, I think, because this is like I had the same problem, which it's not always a problem, but it could become a problem. Like you're practicing and then you just let yourself float away and you're just playing and like sometimes you have to do that just to find some fluency, but then you go back
Yeah,
into being present. And if you spend too long in that kind of pleasant, it's a pleasant state because you're in your room and you're comfortable and maybe it sounds good, that doesn't transfer to the stage. Like the present practicing transfers much better to the stage because it doesn't change as
yeah.
much. The feeling doesn't change as much. So yeah, that's a very good point.
And what I would what I'm always really amazed at is that our impatience will slow down our progress. So if we like consciously go slower, then we will cover much more fuel from the ground. Yeah,
Yes.
because we are forcing to like walk like in slow motion, and sometimes it doesn't apply. Sometimes also we practice slow and it doesn't apply to a faster tempo. I'm thinking about that as well because I practice it slow, but the relationship to the concert playing is not perfect. Yeah, so I don't get the full benefit of so I'm also reflecting about that a lot, how to practice, in what way to practice slow to transfer it 100%
Yeah.
without any loss
Well,
of.
it seems like awareness is key. Like slow practice to me is about allowing yourself to be aware of more details, like a high resolution image versus like low resolution image. And then you
Yeah,
can zoom out of that high resolution image, which would be like faster tempo, but it's still a high resolution image. You just zoomed
yeah.
out. Um, yeah,
Oh, that's a very good picture.
thank you. That was free. That one is free. I won't charge you for that.
Yeah. Ah, good. You're like
Zwei
Max
Franken.
Rostal.
Yeah. Um, so great. So I want to get a bit more into practicing, and I want to do that by talking about your experience studying with Herr Professor Zachar Braun. And I actually had the pleasure to watch many of his lessons in Zurich. When I had a chance, I would just kind of sit in on the lessons, and
Really?
I don't think I sat in on any of yours, but it was very interesting, and I
So
learned.
you saw quite a few of his lessons?
Yeah, I did. I mean,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
like, why would I pay 500 francs when I can just? Because a lot of there's a lot of great things I learned just by watching him and watching him work with students that have different difficulties. Not all of his students were like just perfect everything.
No.
So of course he had to show some things, and like for example how to practice double stops. He had a lot of interesting things, like what I got from him,
Yeah.
this like 2 against 3 stuff to practice double stop, like all kinds of little things. So I want to ask you what it was like studying with him, and
Yeah.
what sorts of things kind of stick with you today, just major points from him that even today, like they always come back to you, and they maybe keep helping you, yeah.
Not much. No,
Good.
I
Tell
think,
me more.
I think, so I studied with Braun for 2 years, and I was many times unhappy because I was too I was too self-assured at that time. I was thinking I didn't want to have the sound his students had. I liked more to have the Zuckerman. I was more looking for a Zuckerman and Shlomo Mintz sound. And so I always felt, yeah, you can tell me, but I think I know it better. So I was not so smart, but I think he likes students who just do his way, like
Yeah,
completely.
of
That
course.
and I think that's maybe, yeah, I would see that critically because on the long run you have to you have to have your own voice, and you have to be like your own perpetuum mobile. So the molecules of the more unruhig, the more non tranquilo you are, the more chance you have to create something later. But so he didn't give me. He had like three layers of students when he was in Zurich. Some would get lesson every day. Those were the first rate students, and you always wanted to belong to that group. And I was kind of the nice guy that was trying to get more of his attention by being flexible. I said, I stay in the school, and he said, you can come later because I have some private students before, and they're young girls with their mothers, and so you can come later. And then later at 9:30 he would say, I'm tired. We will do more lessons next time. And next time when he came like 3 weeks later, everything was set to 0 again, and I would have maybe 1 or 2 lessons. So, but what was extremely good with him is that the level in the class was just absolutely incredible. There were amazing people like So Young-yoon and Mayuko Kamio, and so that just, you could hear those people play in the lesson, and that would motivate you to work so hard. Even if you would work with your own means and try. And he had assistants, so I had some lessons with Alexander Gilman, who I didn't admire as a violinist, I have to say, which I hope he doesn't kill me. But he gave me some.
Alex, we love you, but we'll talk later.
But he showed me some things, but what I learned from Bronn, I think, so now I have to say something really good about him, is the only way that I could make. Because before Bronn, I also did many classes with Anna Chumachenko, and she always supported me, but she always supported me like, you're so musical, it's nice, and said, I want to be serious, I want to be really good. It's good. And so I felt like she couldn't help me to get professionalism in my playing, because I didn't have the amount of technique which was required to play violin concertos with good orchestras professionally.
Yeah. And
I think if anybody gave this to me, only Bronn, because he's uncompromising. And
standards.
So that by that I profited very, very much, and also what you said, he has. I think his technique is still. I think it's some parts are very good and some parts are use too much force. It's not efficient enough, but he has very often the most direct way to solve a technical issue. Like he has a really fast track for certain problems technically, and I think that's absolutely fascinating. And I owe him, for sure. I owe him a lot.
I think maybe I was in a slightly less complicated position because I was able to grab some things from him without any of the psychological torment that you had to go through.
As a student, you want to be loved and appreciated so much. You want to be special for your teacher, and that's why I would never, ever accept any student whom I could not serve in my time frame 100%. So when I taught in the Geneva University, I was requested to teach 13 students, and that would have been good for my money, but I had concerts as well. And I said, I would love to come. I can teach 5, and I will select them. And that was really arrogant from me, but I think it was a positive, good decision, because those students really had a lot of effort from me, and I think I would, if I say another thing critically, I think if you as a teacher, you have to be there for the students, and not the students have to be means of providing your name on and on. You yes. Even if you're and teaching is actually not so many. Great violinists come from great teachers without no name. So there's not like there's not a secret you have to get this Braun or Kushner or whatever stamp. The teacher has to be dedicated, and the teacher also needs the right student who is really dedicated. And then I think, and especially now, Augustin Haderlich also said that, he thinks as well, because of YouTube and things like tonebase who are elevating this on a new level. Augustin said he thinks that the high-class players will come from more different places because there's really accessible information for everybody out there on the internet. I also, for instance, in the Corona time, I watched Itzhak Perlman's masterclass on this masterclass series,
Yeah.
and I practiced months with that. And his recipes are very simple, but it helped me a lot. So I think I am a little bit misstrauisch. I don't trust so much the big names anymore, even though I was always seeking for them, because if you really believe in yourself that you have a core, you don't need to have this teacher's name. You don't
Absolutely.
need. You only need good knowledge, and it's not linked with. Nobody has some kind of a key which is not able for anybody else. And
yeah, my approach in Zurich was very much to kind of I learned how to learn from everybody and just kind of find solutions from, I'm like sitting in an orchestra and I'm sitting next to like So Young Yoon or something. And so I watch and I try to imitate something that looks like it's working really well. How does that work? And, and then some things from some famous teachers, like they do have obviously their bits of good advice. And I've always tried to kind of grab from here and there, and just whatever I feel will like.
But you also met. You also went to Keshet Elon, where I unfortunately never went, and you also met probably Vadim Glusman and Ida Handel and Gitlis, and so that's another side of the moon and of the universe, which is a link. Which is a link to the old violin playing. And I have to say, I was so surprised because my latest teacher, the last teacher like I had was Hans-Heinz Schneeberger. He was a legendary Swiss violinist, and he was a student of Jacques Thibault, like really.
Fantastic.
And so he showed me how to play the poem, and so his way of tone production was really different than anything those in the 40s born teachers, Chumachenko, Braun, and Zell, even Galamian. Like it was before. It's more like the Huberman style, and he could imitate, or he played in his little cellar where he teach. He played like that, and it sounded like that. But I couldn't. So he played that poem. He played this on the D string, whereas I played. I played it. I was always thinking you have to find this color on the G string, and that's how I can use my arm and my vibrato. But he made it sound like real French music, like Jacques Thibault. So that's really interesting, and I think.
Well, so what is it about that makes it like? Obviously, the D and the G have different colors. So, like, what are you doing on the D, and what is the goal of playing it on? Like, where does that color come from? What do you think?
I think the way he. Maybe I have to take my other bow. The way he applied the bow speed was in a different ratio than what I'm used to do. So it was kind of slower without adding extra pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So and the vibrato was also not inspired through many like exercises, but it was more like a cell breathing, or like not
It wasn't Hilary Hahn vibrato.
yeah, it wasn't like this projecting to projecting vibrato, and you know, I really tried to imitate it, or I tried to take from it, and I could take some of Schneeberger's things, but I could never I never grabbed his rhetorical playing. He was such a master of the bow in terms of rhetorical playing. And I was never able to change my sound production, or even to get maybe some colors I could, for the Britten concerto, I could sort of include into my playing. But then, yeah, he died, and it felt like a light. It felt like a huge library, and the light was turned off. And even though I worked 4 years with him, I didn't work Berg concerto, I didn't work Bartok, which he premiered, the first Bartok he premiered.
Wow.
And so that was so sad to me, yeah.
So one of the things I noticed and I really like about your playing is, in fact, your sound production, your kind of devotion to quality of sound, and particularly how you play in lower dynamics, like you yield to the bow, you don't force the bow, you let the bow carry out its motion, and so maybe we can get into just how we can practice improving our sound quality, and whether that's something you've always had, or you did some things in the past few years to like particularly focus on sound quality. So I'm wondering if you can talk about that a bit.
Yeah, so when it comes to piano sounds, which should transport as well as possible in a bigger hall, I believe that we have to. I watched Julian Rachling's masterclass often in YouTube.
Does he play piano? Does he play piano?
No.
No.
Yes, I think he has this kind of reverb in the piano, so what Dmitry Sitkovetsky told me is to play with overtones and in the left hand. So I try to create as much reverb through intonation, like to intonate the fingers into make the violin resonate. I will try to show later. And the second thing is I try to be inside the string with. I try to play from here, like Milstein, but unfortunately I don't have this kind of. I have no Franco-Belgian grip, but I try to play only from here, because Milstein, Christoph Poppen, who also I worked with, he was student of Milstein, and Milstein always told a story that in 1910 some guy had a surgery in his eye, and in Russia, and they had to remove really make with a big knife a really specific cut in the eye. And he said, Milstein said that the surgeon would do this cut from here and never from here. Or so Milstein was always very strong, thinking about playing from the shoulder. And sometimes our teachers say, yeah, you shouldn't play like that. You have to always play. So, but what I try to do is that I also practice the open strings like Gitlis practiced it. I never saw him, but I would play from making noise. I would try to play start by making a noise, and to get to the most opened bell-like sound, and at the same time I try to be extremely inside the string, connected with all my arm, and even if I'm playing piano, like that. Even if I play the piano, then I will always try to feel my arm inside the sound, transporting it. And if I get really nervous, I will lose that. But if I practice that really well, then
String spins.
I can, yeah, and so Sitkovetsky Dima always told me more air in the sound. But if you just have air and the arm is out, then you will play. It's empty. But so I am thinking about the nucleus texture where I'm imagining like this pure sound, which also Milstein has, like this overtony sound, which goes directly to the string. Mm-hmm. And I try to relax every part of my body, including how I stand. To think about what can I do simpler, what can I do less, because Schneeberger always said, when we do a mistake on the violin, it's usually not that we did not enough, but we did too much, Too much distance, too much movement. So I try to go more to the core and less, and I try to sink into the string and then start to use a little more bow speed and less weight, but being full in the string. If I practice that long for many hours, then I can achieve unforced sound quality, which I like, which will not fail me later.
Yeah, I like what you said about the shoulder and that very graphic surgery example. That's like totally spot on, because we get so caught up with this, which is not a bad thing, but we lose the fact of that the sound really comes from here. And I always tell people, like, when you start a sound, don't do that, like pull from the shoulder and then you can continue.
I agree 100%. And I always tell my students, even though I don't have proof for what I'm saying, I think the bigger movements first and the smaller joints will follow, not the other way around. So even when I watch Nathan Milstein play very fast notes, if you listen to the Goldmark concerto or the Glazunov concerto, other than Heifetz, nobody plays as accurate as Milstein the fast notes, in my opinion. And he wouldn't play them from here. He just goes forth and back with his arm, the most. He doesn't even do something
so with this bow hold, obviously you can't do all this stuff. So it's almost like you have to build that efficient large lever, the action of the large lever, so it's almost like like people with a Franco-Belgian hold can maybe try that as an experiment to kind of limit yourself so that you have to work from here. And my teacher in Zurich
always let people practice with the fist.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, that's an extreme version for sure. But my teacher in Zurich, Rudolf Kuhlmann, he had an interesting technique. He had essentially a Franco-Belgian hold, but he didn't do this stuff. It's pretty, I don't want to say stiff, but there isn't a lot. He just changes directions, And so that was very interesting for me to see that there's so much working here, even though you have this. Okay, good. So
no, I think Daniel, just one last thought on that subject. I think that we are now through visualized society. Everything is visual, like almost pornographic. with food and everything. So we are also learning to play the violin from how it looks, and
Yes.
we have a certain idea. But it's absolutely it makes it's völlig egal. It doesn't play any role how it looks. The function is important. If you make a bow change and the functionality of the bow change is right, you can do it with almost no movement.
Yes.
And or even if you look at the bow technique of Vadim Repin, which is not visible from outside, like you can see, he's doing the bow change here, but like the refinement of the bow division and how he's using the bow, he's a magician of the bow.
Yeah, it's more like Heifetz.
So yes. So I think we should listen to the bow technique, not only look at it.
Totally agree. So I'm wondering if we could dig in a bit more into just, I want to ask you about the way you practice, and maybe if we take some kind of, you were just playing this Beethoven passage.
Yeah.
Like, how would you practice that passage, or if you recall, just how were you building that in the past few years? We probably learned and relearned this concerto in recent years. And
yes.
So like, how would you approach that?
Yeah, recently in 2020, I learned it in 2013 when a girlfriend left me. So then I learned the Beethoven concerto in
Perfect.
like 2 weeks. It was so I learned very, very much, but I used my own fingerings and they were very not sustainable. And then I recorded it in 2015 in sort of a Baroque way, very fast tempi and very light playing. And I think it's an enjoyable recording. But when I had to play it again, then I played it in 2017 several times, but it was never like I was always sure I would not play it with a good orchestra because it's not reliable enough. And then when I had to play it again in 2020, I said I have to have good fingerings, so I bought Wolfgang Schneiderhan's fingerings, and I felt like they fit me so well. So I just relearned it, and I was so inspired because Emanuel Ceknavorian, dear friend of mine, he just like 2 months before my performance, there was an upload of his version of the Beethoven concerto with WDR Sinfonieorchester and Christian Macellaro, and Ceknavorian playing his own cadenza. Please check it out. It's really, really talented.
Yeah, he's
and
fantastic.
I was so inspired. Also in Corona time, I was so inspired from his recital in Zurich because his violin playing was, in a way, effortless. Like I only think Milstein had. I never saw violin playing like this in Zurich in the recent years. It was out of this world, and he used like everything was just on the spot. And so I felt like I should be able to do that as well. Usually I think of I'm standing in the way of my own progress. So every day I'm thinking like, please forget everything that I used to do, like where I apply pressure. And the Beethoven concerto is really a good example because I could then I start to practice it extremely slow, and I believe in some kind of my interpretational credo is to create subjectivity by searching for objectivity. So I'm never going to look to play differently, to be distinguished from other violinists, but I'm trying to look for the absolute golden middle, for pure intonation, for pure sound, and for this German clarity in rhythm, which I have found in Bach. And so I focus on all of that, and then through a long period of work, something personal will appear, but not by trying to look for it. And so I think that Beethoven concerto is maybe the most beautiful piece to practice because it's so good music. Like Bach, it's also beautiful to practice. And then I would just start to practice really slow and And I would not interrupt when I make, I don't like everything I play, of course. From the beginning, I don't like anything, but I don't interrupt. I will create my backbone for the concert right when I start practicing. Like I will say what is coming out of the violin, it's me.
So you don't get into the habit of like, no, let me start over.
No.
Yes.
No. I will try to really super focusedly to play to the end of the phrase, and then to identify what was not good as specific as possible. Like, because usually I think I remember, always around this note it's difficult, and I think like a cloud around the problem. I think somewhere, and if I just put more effort in, it will be better. But if I take one step back and really identify, it's this note and it's usually too low, not like to say how specifically it is, then I don't have to take much more effort, but I have to specifically change that note.
Yeah.
And that will create result.
One thing I noticed you doing is kind of the way you're practicing slow. It's not like everything is in slow motion. Like certain movements are actually still fast. Like you're not playing with like sloth fingers. Like there's clarity.
So I believe that in German music, Bach and Beethoven, I want to play everything. I'm looking for an elementary color, which is like fire, water, and so I will not do sophisticated things with falling, and I will just like bread or pasta, like just as. Yeah, I repeated it. Now it's even a little bit better after one little break. So and then through repeating it, I will start to feel emotional about it in the practicing, and I will let this emotion take more space, but I will never leave the rhythm. I will never leave the discipline in the playing, because that's what makes me be able to play it in front of others then, because that's the ultimate difficult concerto.
Do you practice that? Like, obviously you know that piece now, but would you practice something like that even slower? Like, do you ever go that slow, or is it kind of not necessary at this point?
Yes, but the slower I go, the more present I have to be to make to create to keep it in relationship to what is going to happen after in the tempo. But I think very consciously about shifts as well. Then after, so I would start. I always want to have a balance between intuitive and analytical. So I would maybe start the way I just played now, and then I would give myself some time to get into it. And when I feel like, now I'm warm and most of the things work somehow, then I would dramatically increase the level of what I request for myself. And then I would also think about not only the intonation of those, and not only the shift, but trying to be relaxed at the same time. Like, and I practice it like playing the piano. So I play even, because I think it should not sound like on my recording. On my recording sound, I think it's not the right way.
Well, it seems like it speaks more when you don't treat them like 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 a little more of a
it's like on the piano, and And then when I practice slow, I would also try to make all of my vibrato slow, because when I'm nervous, it usually gets faster. So. And I would save bow always in the beginning. So I would try to. But I would never go to the extreme of a caricatura. I would always try, I would never do. Yeah. I would always try to make it sound as close as possible to. As close as possible to, and what is difficult as well is when I practiced it very slow, and then I started to play it much slower than before as well. So now I play it much slower.
So we talked about kind of how to not make these artificial pauses, and you mentioned like how you're in the music right away, and you have to continue what you started, like a little bit like a performance would be. What about kind of the other side of practicing? Like when you take, maybe it's something slightly more difficult, or there's some detail you're trying to work out, like if it's just one gesture, or like 3-4 notes, do you have ways of, like how do you do repetitions? Like how do you approach that? Do you try to do as few repetitions as possible? Or are there moments where you have like a system to like repeat something like 100 times, and then that is beneficial for you, like some small section?
Yes, I would do that maybe for like really dangerous shifts, like this one here. No, I'm in the wrong key. This one, this A flat, is difficult for me, so I wouldn't. This one I would practice very. I would then really divide it, and how I do it is, I would. And I do this with my students as well. So stop the bow left to the right position, right contact on the bow, and then when the right contact is established, vibrato, and then go. So I would do those kind of things, like stop, like or what I also practice very, very relentlessly is to try to be earlier with the left hand than with the right hand. So I would. Not together. Because then if I have to play fast, it will sound like this, but I will collect. So the right hand it's like driving the car. So I would put in the new course and then give thrust. And so I will first put the finger and then play. And even if I connect it 100%, the left is before the right. And that brings me back to Bohren, because Bohren always said left and right hand has to be independent. So he would never do. He would never try to bring them together, but he would say, this has to be right, and this has to be right. And what Czech-Navorian Emanuel added to this idea for me was that it has to be independent, but the left has to be always before. And now it's more accurate. Yeah, and so, but how to practice this? It is quite. I'm still experimenting with it. I think I don't have the high level of it yet, but but it means I will interrupt the bow stroke, and I will take apart left and right.
Yes.
Not. Or then I'm sometimes late. Yeah, so that's a huge part of what I'm practicing, and Emmanuel told me it's a big secret for violin playing: left before right.
Yeah, and it's a big secret partially because it's so applicable to many different situations. Like what you did with the shift, what you're doing is you're not allowing yourself to hear as much. Like you're not, but rather,
Yeah,
right. So it's a physical, like you feel where that note is. If you kind of deprive your ear of the comfort of like having that transition note and everything, and it seems like that helps much more accurate playing.
and yeah. So but usually, so what I sometimes think is when I start to practice slowly, my level is quite low. There's quite many different things that are not in place. But if I do it with a very purely and very relaxed, and I have a bow which I only use for practicing purposes, and I always practice without the shoulder rest, and I never play in concert without the shoulder rest because I feel like, because I try to play on the bottom of the violin. I think Sharing told that, so that I will play. And I will not think that I'm connecting to the string, but I try to play to the bottom of the violin. And I can feel this relationship better when I don't play with the shoulder rest. And I have this bow, there's a copy of a Tourt. It's a modern bow and it's very soft. And I think it helps me to counter work against some of my stiffness, which I have since many years, and I always have to work against it. Like it's like a Kinderkrankheit, like a children's sickness, which will not go away. So I have to constantly work against it, and this helps me. And only when I found like, okay, then I will take my concert bow, which is much heavier, and then I will try to loosen up a bit. And then I find I get a good mixture of sound quality. Yeah. So, but I'm experimenting with this all the time.
Well, this is, Heifetz, there are these old videos of him doing that as well. He had his Tononi, his practice violin, and
Really?
Well, yeah, it's like once once you're warmed up, the practice fiddle goes away, and out comes one of the famous Guarneri. There's this old documentary. Maybe if I had the luxury of having like multiple violins and one of them being a Guarneri, I would experiment with that. But for me, it's like, okay, I couldn't understand the reason he would use a less good violin, but I think what you're saying makes sense, like that certain instruments or bows present certain challenges maybe that prime you in the right way. Like if it's too light, then you're going to have to really kind of pay attention to how you put weight into the instrument and to do that very well. And then you go back to a bow that's heavier and it does more work for you and you can release. So this is kind of like there's a method to the madness.
I talked with Augustin recently when he was in Winterthur, and he also has a heavy bow, Simon, or yeah, I think he has two Simon. And I told him that, you know, because he was making the bow quite.
He likes to break the bows. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I told him, you know, if you put too much drill on the bow, you will kill some part of the overtones. And he didn't agree first, but I'm sure it's true. And so I think we players, because sometimes in the big hall, I experience the same in Liverpool when in the big hall, then I feel security. I have to give more, zack, 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 and then in. But it's like a life lie. Yeah, it will help you maybe as a short medicine, but it will be also dangerous for the bottom and the overtone richness of your sound on the long term. So yes. In between charging that way, charging to press the violin with more bow pressure, you have to release it again. That's what I think about that.
Interesting. I'm reminded of one thing. Just remembered that I saw Braun doing, and I don't know. I mean, he's not unique in doing this, but it kind of just stuck with me for a long time. Like he would have, like the way he had students play repetitions without stopping, as a way to kind of feel the direction of like. Each time trying to maybe connect more. Like that's something I found myself, maybe I have my own take on that, but I started doing that more now.
You know, that's one of his best exercises is for legato or to add a note. So you play. And then you would
go back.
You would make your whole focus on not changing the bow. So not dividing the bow, but or he would do. And he would take your bow and do like this on your violin, so to make it independent. And I have to say that I used also a lot of this for practicing earlier as well, like for Hartmann, so just to make into movement and then go. Yeah.
And sometimes I saw him even take the left hand off and continue with the bow the same way, and like maybe sing the notes and then put the left hand back on and the next repetition, like these kinds of little processes.
And you know, he plans every note. So if you start the Tchaikovsky concerto, he will make you practice. Then no crescendo.
Kein crescendo.
No crescendo, but the whole bow. So no crescendo, but no diminuendo. And then save the bow without accent. And so he would really be specific about those bow division points and go back and back and back. So you would spend like 45 minutes just on creating the right vibrato together with the right acceleration of the bow, and then again. That's what you talk about.
Yeah.
Then slow again. No accent.
The difficulty with this stuff is like, I think sometimes it doesn't work I mean, if it works, then all the students would be like amazing. And I think when it doesn't work, it's like you're taking something that's ultimately an emotional idea, that phrase, and we're dissecting it into a million pieces. And sometimes you lose the connection of like, there's a point to why you're distributing that bow that way. And there's such an emphasis on like the mechanical aspect of it that I think some students get stuck doing that, and they never see like it's actually supposed to have an effect.
Yes.
And always make sure that,
Exactly. And sometimes Bron will be satisfied if he can see you got the idea. But then what happens is that people will start to play his ideas and not the piece anymore.
Yeah.
And you know, when you start to play. You know, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but then I can hear only ideas and only student and nothing. So the violin playing has to be, the great violin playing somehow has to happen by itself. Like you have to keep looking with your instinct, and you have to make all of those tools yours to a certain extent, but never too much. And that's maybe why I think that those really influential teachers are so good to give you the next level, but they can also be dangerous to prohibit you from to really become, because I think many good conductors I meet, I think they wouldn't like most of the Bron students playing Mendelssohn concerto. Because it's violinistic and it sounds like Tchaikovsky in a way. So I think you have to get the means of playing the violin as well as you can, but you have to think about what I think I got from the quartet playing style. You know, if you are able to play the Beethoven violin concerto in a total purity and strong discipline and with all your heart, then you're one of a few. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
And so I think we should focus on that to create this incredible balance and to become subtle interpreters. And I think you posted on the tonebase, you posted the Schubert Rondo, which I played. And, you know, I practiced it for 6 weeks during the summer, slow all the time, because it was so technically difficult. It's quite difficult.
Yeah.
And I practiced it until it got some kind of natural feeling to it, even though it could be played much faster, or it could be. So that's the process I would like to recommend, because that's how I can achieve certain results, is by immersing myself into it. And it also success in or achievement in quality means for me, because I try to, you love the violin so much, and you started late, and I started late as well, and I try to play well since years. So I cannot just elevate my playing by trying harder, because I'm trying hard since a long time. So the most important question is, what do I leave out? Like, where do I create extra space? Where do I create more rest? And how do I plan the repertoire in order to give it a chance to practice 6 weeks on it, or to practice 2 years on it, to get to a, like, you know, sometimes when we think we are going, everybody wants to go fast, fast success, fast whatever, career, or fast results in practicing. But when we slow down and like really internally decisively slow down and go into details, then it starts to get really interesting, and then you start to forget about all your ambitions and all the things you want to show off, and then you a more pure reflection of yourself will take more space, and I believe that will create other results in the feedback from how people understand your playing. So that the playing has to be personal but somehow understandable.
Yeah, no, that's a beautiful point. And I think we often get lost in images of what, like how we imagine we'd like to be, and then, you know, you're in danger of trying to rush to that goal, and you miss so much detail, and you miss the opportunity to find your actual identity with the piece, your own personal connection. And that's what, slow practice does that. Well, look, Sebastian, we can probably go on for a long time talking about all these things. Before we finish, I just wanted to ask you if you have some interesting projects coming up, kind of what's going on for you, what's coming up next.
Yes, I'm learning the new Vasquez concerto.
Oh.
There's a new. He wrote a new concerto for Robin Ticciati.
Interesting.
He refused to write one for me some years ago, but he wrote a new one for Robin Ticciati.
Playing a piece, a trio of his soon. I'm learning this something Angel. Oh God, I forgot. Very nice music.
And so I will play that in Budapest, but in general, what is coming up? I will play Beethoven again this year with Luzern and Michael Sanderling. I'm really looking forward, and I'm always, I always set the clock to 0. I always think the next time I'm going to really make it, and I think that's a good attitude. And in terms of concert projects, of course, I'm very occupied with organizing the Brook Festival. And not the Bruch Festival, but the Brook Festival. And of course, I want to build this festival in one of the biggest festivals in Switzerland. So I'm never short of ambition. And there will be many concerts. Oh yeah, I will play three concerts with Daniel Hope, with Pert Tabula Rasa, Schnittke Concerto Grosso, and the new commissioned violin concerto for 2 of us. So that I'm looking forward to. But I will make a really nice recording project in 1.5 years, which I cannot talk about yet, but I will tell you secretly.
Okay,
but,
you better.
But it's a very nice recording project centered around a very inspirational female violinist who inspired great composers. And I hope that I can get to play Duthier and Ligeti soon. Mm-hmm. So I'm.
You've inspired me to consider, playing these huge contemporary works, because I've never went that far.
There's really good things out there. Like Henri Duthier's Arbre des Songes is an amazing piece, and Ligeti's violin concerto is like Berg's violin concerto in the first half of the century. Ligeti is the pinnacle. But there's also the 4th concerto by Schnittke, which I consider is quite a good piece. And Wiedmann. So and I just hope, and I'm working on with my management, because I have to be very invested by myself in, I have to take care of my networks, like the conductors I already worked with and whom I clicked with, and then I have to find orchestras which work with them or which work with me, and so I have to somehow, like making Lego, because I'm a huge Lego fan, so I have to build every brick for every concert by myself, because it doesn't just come by itself. I've been waiting for a long time to.
I remember Henrik Schering used to have like a little book where he kept very detailed notes of like every relationship, and like he would write down, I met this person, like the dog is sick, next time ask how the dog is doing. Like things like that, just like as part of networking. And it seems so superficial, but it's kind of
I think it's super important, and how I approach it, I always think about, I would have different pots on my cooking. I would cook, and I have different pots, and they have valuable things in it. Like here is cooking my quality of playing, and here is cooking my repertoire.
Which one is the fondue? Which one is the Swiss fondue?
Maybe the Heinz Holliger as a conductor, and then I would think about and then I would really put much thought about, but playfully, how can I would not look at other violinists' success too much and think, oh, he's playing much better and he has so much good opportunities. I would try to stay away from that, but I would think about all the incredible assets I have that I overlooked. And I would think about, maybe probably the problem is me and I'm not smart enough. So maybe if I was Elon Musk, I would find a way to connect all of this much, much better. And but to find new ways of creating your old clothes needs that you always try to take a step back and get distanced from yourself and think like, what is maybe actually quite good, what is maybe not good. And so I approach this whole career thing very playfully, and I try to because I believe that there's far too many opportunities that I miss because I'm not smart enough, and that it's not that the doors are closed and I cannot make it, but I try to be more aware and then to find things that could click together, and maybe one of 10 or 7 ideas then happens.
Yeah, no, that's so important. And it seems like a lot of your success has come from just not only looking for opportunity, but looking for the opportunity to connect things in ways that aren't obvious. And as you said, like, you have to sometimes step back. And I see this when I'm, building my own career. I see the same thing in different ways. And sometimes it's as simple as like, well, I have this edge and then I have that edge. Can I combine those two to create something even more powerful? So, yeah.
And I always believe that the way that the paths can be very short.
Yeah.
But not when we force on the path, but if we force on the inhalt, like on what's inside. Our currency is our playing and the way we are, our honesty, and so I think our currency, or my currency as a violinist, is being extremely as honest as I can be and reliable, and having not one piece of paper between the way I talk and between the way I would play. Like, it should be like incredibly just one. And so if I focus on this, I will be more unmistakable, and people will not hire me for something they want.
Yeah.
So, and then the rate of success will be a little higher because I'm not pretending to be more of this type or. So yeah, that's my career advice. But many people sometimes ask me about how I would do it, and I tell them everything I know, and still some of them. So you have to really start with yourself over and over again. But Absolutely. It's beautiful.
Last question for you. Do you have any favorite albums, or maybe something that's like the current favorite that you would recommend people go out and listen to? Could be non-classical, but maybe if there's a classical.
Yeah, recent weeks, I was listening on the replay mode Castelnuovo Tedesco violin concerto with Itzhak Perlman. It's like I think it's one of his best violinistic playing. It's insane.
I actually don't know. I haven't heard that recording. I'll go look for it.
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful.
Awesome.
And it's a beautiful piece, and it's so inspiring. But my favorite recording one is Britten Violin Concerto with Ida Handel. That's just Ida, or anything Ida Handel plays is like only blood directly to my heart. That's really piercing. And so the Britten Concerto with Ida Handel, there's no other Britten concerto, even not Wengerhoff and Janine Jansen, for me.
Yeah, I love Ida was a very unique person. I found that the older she got, the bigger her hair got on stage, and the higher the heels got on stage, which is pretty impressive. Yeah. All right, my friend. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure
Thank
to
you,
talk to you.
Daniel.
I think it's been very insightful to hear about your process, and you're such a passionate musician, and you're very introspective. And I think that's the recipe for continual growth. And I appreciate you coming on to share that.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. Thanks for hosting so well, and I'm looking forward to watch all of your practice vlogs.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Get ready to be inspired or not